In this video, we are going to talk about Stockholm Syndrome. So before starting this video, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for future updates. The Norrmalmstorg robbery was both a bank heist and a hostage situation. But it is most famous for being the event that inspired the term Stockholm Syndrome. On August of 1973, it took place in Norrmalmstorg Square in Stockholm, Sweden, and it was the first time a criminal incident in Sweden was covered by live television. Jan-Erik Olsson was a convicted felon who had gone missing while he was out on furlough from prison. After his disappearance, he robbed a bank and kept 4 people as hostages. During the subsequent talks, the Swedish Minister of Justice Lennart Geijer granted permission for Olsson's friend and former cellmate Clark Olofsson to be taken from prison to the bank. Olofsson had a lengthy criminal history, but it was thought highly improbable that he was working with Olsson. Olsson was also a professional criminal. In a famous turn of events, the hostages eventually formed bonds with their kidnappers and pretended to protect them. It is important to emphasize, however, that the hostages were merely wary of the police and their readiness to put the hostages' lives at danger. After 5 days of the standoff, the police finally launched an attack using tear gas, and the robbers eventually capitulated. Olsson was given a sentence of 10 years in prison for the heist, whereas Olofsson was finally found not guilty of the crime. A great deal of academic and public interest in the case was sparked as a result of the hostages' actions, which led to the production of a Swedish television film titled Norrmalmstorg in 2003, a Canadian film titled Stockholm in 2018, and a Swedish television series titled Clark in 2022. On August 23, 1973, while Jan-Erik Olsson was out on parole, he went to the Kreditbanken on Norrmalmstorg in Stockholm and attempted to rob the bank. He was unsuccessful. Shortly after being alerted of the incident, the Swedish police arrived at the location. After Olsson opened fire, one officer, Ingemar Warpefeldt, sustained injuries to his hand, and another officer was told to sit in a chair and sing a song after being ordered to do so by Olsson. After that, Olsson took 4 people hostage and demanded that his friend Clark Olofsson be brought there, in addition to 3 million Swedish kronor, 2 firearms, bulletproof vests, helmets, and a Ford Mustang. Olsson was a career criminal who was responsible for a number of armed robberies and acts of violence, the first of which he committed when he was 16 years old. Olofsson was granted authorization to be brought in by the government in order to serve as a communication link between the police negotiators. Kristin in Mark, who is being held as a hostage, has stated that she is comfortable with Olsson and Olofsson, but that she is concerned that the police may worsen the situation by resorting to brutal techniques. Olsson and Olofsson sealed up the inner main vault of the bank where they were holding the hostages with barricades. The negotiators agreed that they may have a car to escape in, but they would not let them take any hostages with them if they attempted to flee. Olsson made a phone call to the Prime Minister of Sweden, Olof Palme, and threatened to kill the hostages. He followed through with his threat by putting one of the captives in a grip. As he hung up the phone, he was overheard yelling at her. The following day, one of the hostages, Kristin in Mark, called Palme and expressed her extreme displeasure with his behavior. She pleaded with him to release both the thieves and the hostages so that she could go free. Olofsson then began to sing Roberta Flack's song "Killing Me Softly" as he made his way around the vault. On August 26, the police bored a hole into the main vault from the apartment above, and at the same time, they took a photograph of the hostages along with Olofsson, which was extensively distributed. In addition to this, Olsson fired his firearm into the hole on 2 separate occasions, causing a police officer to sustain wounds to both his hand and face. Olsson had fired the shot from his rifle and threatened to kill the captives if any attempt was made to use the gas. On August 28, despite the use of tear gas by the police, Olsson and Olofsson turned themselves in after being held for an hour. There were no hostages who suffered injuries that would last permanently. Both Olsson and Olofsson were found guilty of the heist, and Olofsson was given a longer prison sentence as a result of his involvement in the crime. He claimed, however, that he had nothing to do with helping Olsson and that he had just worked to keep the situation under control in an effort to rescue the hostages. Later on, he was found not guilty by the Svea Court of Appeal, therefore he was merely required to serve the remainder of his original sentence. After that, he ended up meeting the hostage Kristen and Mark on multiple occasions, and their families ended up being good friends. In addition, he was responsible for a number of other crimes. Olsson was given a sentence of 10 years in jail for his crime. He was the recipient of a great number of laudatory letters from ladies who thought him handsome. Later on, he became engaged to a woman who, contrary to what some claim, was not one of the women who had been held hostage. It is believed that he committed other crimes after he was released from prison. After evading Swedish authorities for 10 years for alleged financial crimes, he turned himself in to police in 2006. Only to be informed that the allegations were no longer being actively investigated at that time. He had been on the run from Swedish authorities for 10 years. Because the hostages expressed sympathy for their captors, there has been increased interest in the subject among academics. Nils Bejerot, a Swedish criminologist, is credited with having first articulated the concept that would eventually be referred to as the Stockholm Syndrome. Norrmalmstorg Syndrome is the Swedish word for Norrmalmstorg Syndrome. Even though Olsson threatened them, the hostages never became violent toward the police or toward one another. Nor did they go aggressive toward Olsson. Jan-Erik Olsson relocated to the northeastern region of Thailand with his wife and kid in the year 1996, and they returned to Sweden in the year 2013. 2009 saw the publication of Olsson's autobiography, titled Stockholm Syndrome, in his native Sweden. Norrmalmstorg, a television movie that was released in 2003 and directed by Håkan Linde, is a loose adaptation of the events. In the Canadian film Stockholm, which was directed by Robert Boudreau and released in 2018, a fictitious account of the heist is recounted. Within the episode titled Hostage of the podcast Criminal, Olofsson discussed the heist at Norrmalmstorg with the host. Clark is a television series that was created by Netflix in 2022. Jonas Åkerlund was the director of the project, and Bill Skarsgård played the lead role of Clark Olofsson. What do you think about this video? Do let us know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from us again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go.